Thank you, Dylan. He did live with us, but only for 3 months because that's all we could afford because he eats so much. Just eggs. I mean, he ate like 6 eggs for breakfast. And so anyway, I am super excited to be here for 2 reasons. Number one, I started a keto diet this week, and I think I accidentally had some sugar. So I'm feeling pretty good. I may, if I just kind of crash and fall over halfway through, but just that's why. But also, I am so for you. Like, I am all in on this generation, and whatever I have, whatever resource, whatever help I can give to help you guys succeed, I am all in on that. And I want you to know that I'm not the only one. In fact, you may notice, so this conference is for 18 to 29-year-olds. But you may notice there's some people here outside that age bracket. And it's not hard to tell. Because, sometimes it is. Like when you're, like I can't tell, you may be 18, you may be 28, I don't know. It's hard for me to tell when you have distance. It's the same when you look at me. You don't know if I'm 40, if I'm 50, if I'm 60. I went to, as a pastor, you go see people in the hospital. I went to a hospital, and I show up, this young couple, but they were in their 30s, and they had a baby, and I went to go see them, and the nurse was like, "Oh, are you the grandpa?" And that was like your first thought? Are you the grandpa? I'm like, gee whiz. They say, doctors don't have a very good bedside manner, but nurses are no good either. And so, just terrible thing to say to me. But the point is, sometimes you can't tell. But we've got some people here that you could tell. They're not 18 to 29. But they're here for you because they love you. They want to put wind in your sails. They want to see you succeed. They want to help you up when you fall. They want to pray for you. They want to encourage you. And they're your biggest fans. So I hope that you're glad that they're here. I am. I've received this in my life. I came to this conference, I guess, 26, 7 years ago, something like that. Older than most of you. In fact, I had this weird experience. I saw Hudson back there. Hudson, I guess you're 18? Something like that? Yeah. And I met his dad at this conference when he was 18. And he had the same kind of cool guy, cocky attitude too. And so the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Hey, would you go with me to Mark's Gospel, chapter 10? Mark's Gospel, chapter 10. I think they put me on the Friday night because they wanted it to be short. Not because I don't have anything to say, but they know it's past my bedtime. And so I chose the shortest gospel, the quickest gospel, Mark chapter 10. So I lead Jubilee Church, and I preach 4 services on a Sunday, and my routine is wonderful and awesome, but it's long, and I'm a bit of an introvert, so it wears me out. So when I get home, I need the couch. I need the couch, and I need some kind of sporting event, preferably football or golf. I know if that sounds high maintenance, it's just the way it goes, and my family understands this as a necessary step to my physical and emotional recovery. But recently, my youngest, who's not yet here, she's just 15, Josie, she objected because she had something she wanted to watch. And she said to me, "Dad, you are always watching sports." And I don't know what it was, but that hit me. Like, is this what my daughter thinks about me? Is this my reputation? Is this what I am always doing? In her eyes, this is what I am always doing. It's an interesting question. It's a haunting question. And I wonder if it's a question that you would be bold enough to ask yourself. What would other people say that you are always doing? Might they say you're always encouraging? Or maybe they'd say you're always complaining. Are you always working? Are you always working out? Are you always scrolling on Instagram? What are you always doing? In other words, what are you known for? This is what Jesus was known for, according to the book of Acts, chapter 10. Throughout all Judea, Jesus of Nazareth, with the Holy Spirit and with power, went about doing good. The reputation of Jesus is that he was always doing good. Now, that seems obvious to you and I, because isn't that what God's supposed to do? I mean, isn't that what Jesus is supposed to do? Gods are supposed to be good. It may seem obvious until you dig in how he did it. Well, how did he do it? Well, Philippians 2 says this: though he, Jesus, was the form of God, he did not account equality with God a thing to be grasped, but he emptied himself. Sometimes we say, oh, she's so full of herself. He emptied himself by taking the form of a servant. Now think about that for a second, because most of us, what we dream about is getting into the school that we want, so that we can have the job that we want, so that we can have the life that we want, so that we can have the money that we want. We live so that we might be filled. Jesus lived so that he might be emptied. We start at the bottom, hoping to get to the top. Jesus started at the top to get to the bottom. Now, just in case you haven't clued in on this, this is not what people normally do. This is not our normal human behavior. This is like an opposite world. And this is not how historically people thought. Think about these truths that most people assume about God. I mean, this is bumper sticker theology, but this is what most people think about God. God is love. God loves everybody. Everybody matters to God. I mean, even like when you talk to people who are atheists, and maybe you're here and you're skeptical, and they'd say, well, if there is a God, he's a God of love. Well, sometimes, I don't know, sometimes Christians object to that. No, he's not, he's more than that. It's like, I think God is love is a good thing. That's what they say, let's just keep it at that. But these are uniquely Christian ideas. Jesus introduced this idea to the world. The fact that you would think that a God would be like this is only because of Jesus. The Greek and Roman gods, they didn't love anyone. The Greek and Roman gods got people to do stuff for them, to serve them. The gods didn't care for people, and they didn't require people to care. And so for most cultures, the idea is that you would ascend high enough in your caste system, in your job, in your career, or whatever, to get other people to do your bidding. I mean, even in our society, our economy is known as a service-based economy, which means the goal is to get people to serve you. Mow your yard, make your food, clean your house. The daydream is you on the beach, somebody else serving you. And all the advertisement and all the messaging is around that. The bottom line is you and I want to be known for being great. But our attempts at greatness are elusive to us. The irony is we're not great at being great. Reminds me of a book by Ernest Hemingway. Any fans of Ernest Hemingway in the room? Okay, Miss Jessen, my 11th grade English teacher, was obsessed with Ernest Hemingway. I was not either. And the F I got on my first paper was proof. She asked me to stay after class to offer me another chance. And that other chance included daily conversations with her about what I was reading until I was finished. And the book was called An Old Man and the Sea. And it's a book about an old man who spends a lot of his time by the sea. And in my first paper, that was the extent of my analysis. But by the second report, I was able to write a bit more intelligently about the protagonist, Santiago. Santiago is an old man who, in fact, lives by the sea, but the story goes much, much deeper than that into the human psyche. Santiago likes to fish, but his reputation as a fisherman is not good. He is seen as salao, which, if you're a Spanish speaker, I apologize for my pronunciation. It means the worst form of unlucky. But Santiago was determined for greatness, and he decides to go for fishing as long as it takes. And check this out. He goes for 84 consecutive days, and he catches nothing. Now, I enjoy fishing. Last year, in fact, I bought a kayak so I can fish more. But I don't have that kind of patience. If I don't catch something in 84 minutes, it's time to go back to the campsite. Obviously, the Lord ain't in this, and we're moving on. But this dude, 84 consecutive days and catches nothing but a boot. I mean, this guy is just striking out. And as you can imagine, he is totally dejected. He's totally bummed out. But he decides to give it another day. And lo and behold, on the 85th day, not only does he catch a fish, but he catches the biggest fish he's ever seen or ever heard about in his life. He catches this huge marlin, and immediately Santiago thinks, now my existence is justified. I'm going to take this marlin back, and everyone's going to see. They're going to give me praise. They're going to give me accolades. I'm finally going to get the greatness that I've longed for. I'm finally going to get my just due. But there's a problem. There's a problem. Santiago does not have the strength or the resources or the wherewithal to actually bring this huge marlin into the boat. And so he thinks to himself, he kind of ties it to the boat, and he ends up killing the marlin with this harpoon. But that's when a greater problem comes as this marlin begins to bleed out. One after the other, the sharks begin to pick up the scent. And wouldn't you know it, these sharks begin to whittle away at this marlin, so much so that by the time Santiago gets back to the dock, he has nothing but a skeleton. The greatness that was in his grasp is no longer. Now, most Hemingway scholars tell us that this book, which is written toward the end of Hemingway's life, that Hemingway himself is the old man Santiago. In writing this book, he's being somewhat autobiographical. In other words, Hemingway is looking through the rearview mirror of his own life, the things that he has accomplished. He has accomplished a lot. He had experienced, if you don't know about Hemingway, he experienced a measure of greatness. Think Solomon. I mean, he checked all the boxes. Wealth, check. Fame, check. Romance, check. But here he is at the end of his life, feeling, though, that he has nothing to show except the skeleton of a fish. It's all vanity. And again, if you know anything about Ernest Hemingway, you know that he is one of the most tormented souls who have ever walked the face of the earth. And some have concluded that the message of Santiago is that there is no meaning in life, and the quest for greatness is elusive. So don't bother. But the problem for so many of us is not that we are on a quest for greatness, because actually I think a quest for greatness is a part of being in the image of God. Like he's put this in our hearts. He has put this desire to attach ourselves to something greater. He did that. He put that in us. The problem isn't our desire for greatness. The problem is where we're fishing. So many of us in this world are fishing and looking for big game success of wealth, of fame, of status, maybe to experience some of that or even a lot of that, only to come up empty and realize they don't actually fulfill. The passage I want to talk to you about tonight is all about greatness. But it's not about greatness in general. It's about true greatness, and Jesus showed it to us. So if you're with me in Mark 10, here we go, verse 35. He's with his disciples. He's been with them for quite some time. And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, come up to him and say, hey, teacher, we want you to do whatever we ask of you. Like, if you're a parent in the room, it's like your kids come up to you. I want you to give me whatever I'm going to ask you for something. You have to do it. It's like, okay, well, tell me what it is, and then I'll decide. But that's actually not what Jesus does. Jesus says, okay, what do you want me to do? And they said to him, grant us to sit one on your right and one on your left in your glory. Deep inside every human heart is a desire to be great, to be valuable. I mean, even Nacho Libre, he's like, I want to taste of the glory, to see what it tastes like. We all want that. We all long for that. Whether we're fishing or luchadors or disciples of Jesus. They knew, they'd been around Jesus. They knew, man, this guy's going places. I mean, at this point, he is wildly popular. Everybody wants a piece of Jesus. And they're like, man, if we attach ourselves to him, we're going places. So they rightly saw that. They just didn't understand how he was going to get there. That's what we get, verse 38. And Jesus said to them, you don't know what you're asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or to be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized? And they said to him, we are able. Just give me the gold. And Jesus said to them, the cup that I drink, you will drink, and the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or my left is not mine to grant, but it is for those whom it has been prepared. James and John recognized that Jesus was great, but they didn't understand why he was great. They saw greatness through the lens how you and I in the world sees greatness. Greatness for us is measured in how high we ascend in our education, in our careers, in our relationships, in our influence. Ooh, they got that many followers. Ooh, they got that school and that degree and that job. That's greatness. Read a poll recently. The question was, what do you want to be when you grow up? This was teenagers at the time. 54% said they wanted to be a celebrity. James and John are probably teenagers here, and that's what they wanted as well. I want to be at the right, and I want to be at the left. And Jesus is like, you don't know what you're asking. You have no idea what you're talking about. What was Jesus talking about? Well, he mentions, number one, a cup. Number two, baptism. So stay with me. I want to teach here a little bit. What's the cup? Well, in ancient times, the cup referred to judgment. You remember how Socrates was sentenced to death? You remember that? You don't remember Hemingway, Socrates, anything? Okay. Well, hey, good news you're here. I'll help you. He was given a cup to drink to die. He drank the cup of poison because the cup in ancient times was a metaphor for suffering and judgment. And of course, that's what it meant in the Old Testament. Anytime you read the Old Testament, when the prophets would talk about a cup, this is going to help you read the Bible, they meant God's justified wrath and punishment on human evil. So when you see that mentioned in the Old Testament, that's what they're talking about. Disciples thought he would have a cup of glory, but Jesus was talking about a different cup, a cup of judgment and suffering. This is the cup referred to in the garden that caused Jesus to stagger. Because the judicial, right, justified wrath of God was beginning in the garden to come down on him. And it bewildered him. He was under stress. He was sweating. He was bewildered. We don't like to think about Jesus that way, but this was the effect that had upon him in the garden. And he was beginning to experience what he would fully experience on the cross, which is full abandonment of the Father, full rejection by the Father, God withdrawing his presence in a way that no one had experienced outside of hell. On the cross, Jesus experienced the justified wrath of God for sin of the entire world. So what's the cup, you ask? It is the suffering and death of Jesus. In other words, he's saying, hey, you want glory? Is that what you want? You want the right and the left? Drink my cup. Suffer and die with me. So that's the cup. Okay, what's the baptism? Because at this point, he'd already been baptized. Okay, I don't know if you... So he got baptized earlier on in the Gospels. And we're in Mark 10 now, toward the end. We're like a week away from him going to Jerusalem that final time. So he'd already been water baptized, so that's over. So what's this one? Well, he tells us in Luke 12. He says, I have a baptism to be baptized with. How great is my distress until it is accomplished. Same thing. I'm going to be baptized into suffering. I'm going to be immersed into suffering. I'm going to be immersed into pain, into blood. James and John, lovers of glory and power, drink my cup, be baptized with my baptism. I don't think so, is what they said. Well, anyway, so here we go in the story. Verse 41. And then the 10 heard it, and they became indignant at James and John, not because they were pious or holier than thou, but because they were jealous. They didn't ask first. And Jesus called to him and said, so he's like, okay, guys, come here. I gotta tell this to you, everyone. You see the people out there, the rulers of the Gentiles, they lord it over them. He's like, come here, close. May it not be among any of you. For each one of you who wants to be great, and guess what? I've got greatness for you. You are going to be great. But your greatness is going to be like my greatness. And my greatness was not defined by how high I ascended, but how low I descended for you. Verse 35, even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus is saying that the path to greatness is the path to Calvary. The path to greatness is not a path where you promote yourself. It is a path where you deny yourself and serve. Narrow is the gate that leads to life. Wide is the path that leads to destruction. You're at a crossroads in your life. I don't know if you know that or not. You know why those of us who are older than 29 are here? Because we know what's at stake in your life. Wide is the path that leads to destruction. Narrow is the path that leads to life. True greatness. Doesn't look like the path to take, but I'm telling you, it's the one to stay on. And you're going to need people around you to help you, encourage you in that, because it's a narrow path. Well, how do we get the power to live this way? Because at first it sounds like nothing more than following the example of Jesus, right? It's kind of like, don't lord it over others, serve. Why? Because the Son of Man set you an example. He serves. He gives his life away. He did it. Why can't you? But then you ponder for a few minutes and it hits you. Now, this didn't hit me the first time I read it. Not the second, not the third, not the 30th. It's not just an example for me to follow. He's not just saying serve the way I serve. This is the Son of Man serving me. This is not just another teacher with some rules on how to live. This is God in the flesh telling his disciples that the reason why he came isn't to get servants, but to be one. He doesn't actually want them to serve him. I don't know if you ever noticed that. Have you ever noticed that there's not one command in the Bible where Jesus says, I want you to serve me? He never says that. And he still doesn't say it, by the way. He's saying, yes, drink my cup of suffering. Yes, serve others. Do as I do. This is what it means to be a disciple. This is what life is about. But don't think that I have come for you to get you to do stuff for me. I will not be served. I will be the servant. In this relationship that we have, Jesus says, you will not serve me. I will serve you. Luke says it this way in Acts. He says, God is not served by human hands as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mankind life and breath and everything. So listen to me, Mobilize. You and I are called to be servants, okay? You're called to be servants. It's part of the Christian identity. What is your identity? Part of your identity is a servant. When people look at your life, they should see, that guy looks like a servant. That's what Paul said, right? In Galatians 6, he says, the world is crucified to me and I am crucified to the world. What that means is, the world is to me like a dead corpse. But when the world looks at me, they see a dead corpse too. They see the stench of the world. So the activity of our lives should look like serving others. We don't do what we want. We do what God wants. That's what freedom is, right? Paul says to the Galatians, brothers, I've called you for freedom. Only do not use your freedom for an opportunity for the flesh, which I'm saying, what is freedom except an opportunity for the flesh? Isn't freedom defined by I get to do what I want, when I want, with who I want? No. Don't use your freedom as an opportunity for the flesh. That's taking on back a yoke of slavery, which is you do you. He says this is what it is. This is freedom. That you would love your neighbor as yourself. Freedom by the Bible is defined by our ability to love. So this is what our life should look like. Even to the point that we suffer. There's joy in it, there's purpose in it, there's freedom in it, but our serving should look like suffering to the world. But even in this, Jesus says, you don't serve me, but I serve you. The call to discipleship is such an impossible life. It takes grace and supernatural power. And so we have to shift our mindset that we're not here to serve Jesus. All right, Jesus, what do you want me to do today? I'm your guy, I'm your girl. No. Jesus is like, every day I'm here to serve you. Jesus is a king, but he's not a king that requires his subjects to die for him, but he dies for his subjects. I'll say it this way. The gospel is not a help wanted sign. The gospel is a help available sign for you and for me. He's our source. See, that's what Jesus, so in John 15, this helps. John 15, Jesus says, I'm the vine. You are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him, he bears much fruit. But apart from me, you can do nothing. Nothing. How is Jesus serving you? Well, I'm sure he's busy. He's got other things to do. And see, that's what Peter tried to do. Remember that? He's like, no, don't wash my feet. He's like, listen, if I don't do this, you can have no part in me. If we don't let Jesus serve us, we have no part in him. We can't actually do what he's wanting us to do. The call to Christianity is not firstly a call to serve Jesus. It's an invitation to be served by Jesus. The secret of the Christian life, this isn't going to be new, isn't what you give. It's what you receive. The glory of the branch is that it bears fruit. But it only bears fruit if it's receiving from the vine. And we are called to serve, but you will only serve. This is true. This is a true statement. You will only serve to the degree that you are being served by Jesus. The people, it's the only way you can do it, actually. I mean, if you try to serve without being served by Jesus, you'll burn out, you'll quit, fill in the blank. You'll think you're being used by people, but you need him to serve you. Let me show you how powerful this is. We're almost done. The band, do whatever you have to do to get ready. I don't know if is this getting ready? I'm going to hear about that from my kids. Like, Dad, that thing, you're doing good until that. Okay, so he's wildly popular. This is the scene, Matthew 20. Matthew 20 is parallel passage to Mark 10. Crowds are just, he's wildly popular. He needs to get to Jerusalem. The disciples are trying to get him to Jerusalem. They don't actually know why. He knows why. He's going there to die. And in Matthew 20, verse 30, these two nameless beggars, they cry out, "Son of David, have mercy on us." Crowds of people, two beggars. What did the crowd do? Well, the crowd did what you and I would do. They rebuked, hey, no, come on. Like, Jesus has got places to be. He's done enough. We're moving on. The crowd rebuked him. What did Jesus do? Verse 32. In stopping, Jesus called them and said, "What do you want me to do for you?" And I'm here to say the very same thing to you. What do you want Jesus to do for you? Well, I'm sure he's got other things to do. I'm okay. What? Well, what do you want for your life? The elusive path to greatness that won't work out? Do you want to be on the path of Calvary? You need to be served by. What do you want him to do for you? Maybe you came here a little hopeless. Maybe you came here with a lack of clarity. Maybe you came here with a lack of peace, lack of vision, lack of hope, lack of power. The list of what we lack is longer than the list of what we have. So you fill in the blank for you. But what do you want? I don't know what it is, but what do you want him to do? I want you, Mobilize, to hear Jesus. Of all the things he could do, hear your faint voice cry out to him. And I want you to see him looking you in the eye and saying, "What do you want me to do for you?" In here in a minute, when the band plays and it gets really spiritual in here, is that we're over here. I'm going to pray for two different groups of people. The first group of people here is like you've got something. You want Jesus to do something for you. And there's some people who really want to pray for you. Jesus wants to minister to you. Jesus wants to serve you. And then over here, I'd love to pray for people who are fishing in the wrong places. You're looking for greatness in a relationship. You're looking for greatness in your job, in your career. Can I show you what happened the following week? Can I show you that real quick? Just take a second. You guys need some time, right? Yeah, okay, they'll be fine. John 13:3. Jesus, check this out. Jesus, knowing that the Father had given him all things into his hands and that he had come from God and going back. So I don't know if you've asked each other the question, hey, what would you do if you had all the money in the world? Where would you live? Where would you go? What would you do? Da-da-da-da-da. Just kind of, it's a fun thing to think about. Jesus has this moment. Jesus knowing that the Father had given him all things. So this wasn't hypothetical. This was literal. He had everything in the world. He could have called down a legion of angels. He could have done whatever he wanted. He could have lived wherever he wanted to live. What does he do? What would you do if you had all the power and the resources to do it? Well, there's only one thing that Jesus can think of. And that is, he rose from supper. He laid aside his outer garments and taking a towel, tied it around his waist. And then he poured water into a basin and began to wash feet. He could do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, to the degree he wanted to do it. And he says, the best thing I could do with my time here on earth, and I only have about 24 hours, is to wash feet. What do you have going on in your life? Jesus invites you into greatness. It's going to look way different. Up is down, down is up versus last. I mean, that whole weird thing that he does. To live is to die. Okay, that makes sense. He shows you a different way. He is a different way. I want you to be served by him. He wants to minister to you. He wants to minister. He knows your frame. Psalm 103. He has compassion on you like a father has for a child. He knows your frame. He wants to minister to you. He wants to know how you can serve you. He also wants to call you into a different kind of fishing. You've been fishing in the wrong place. He's got greatness for you. He's got greatness for you. Maybe you've been resisting that. For whatever reason, I don't know. But he wants to give you greatness. Here's the thing, and this is the last thing I say, I promise. Well, in fact, why don't you go ahead and stand. Here's the deal. God has given us everything we need for life and godliness. He's given us himself. Listen guys, we have available to us the ministry of Jesus. All right? Does that sound like a big deal to anybody else except me? Okay. We also have greatness. Actual greatness. He wants to give us greatness. Now, here's the thing about the devil. You know something about the devil? He cannot take anything from you that God has given you. But guess what he can do? He can get you to despise it. Have you despised the ministry of Jesus? Have you despised the greatness that he offers you for something else? For a bowl of soup? Are you kidding me? He loves you so much. He loves you more than I could comprehend and communicate. And that's why he gives us his spirit, and he's going to minister to you in ways that I wouldn't know how. And he's going to empower you in ways that only he can do.